I see, but on the other hand, a lot of times, especially during this short period of counteroffensive, continue to remind the politician of the world that we need support from the air. That's why I want to add some more information about this. If the offensive in Ukraine was led by the American army, it would rely on the support of aviation, which would destroy the enemy's fortifications long before sending infantry. Instead, the Ukrainian military suffers from a lack of aviation and insufficient number of armored vehicles and artillery weapons, which leads to higher losses on the battlefield, according to American experts. So because there obviously is no way to Harry Potter you through the minefields, you have to literally go through it. So you will suffer lots of losses. The experts claim, however, I quote, the Americans would never have fought this way. They would have carpet-bombed entire minefields and lines of trenches long before sending even one soldier there. This is the end of the quote. So let's not forget about the NATO doctrine, which says that any counteroffensive actions take place exclusively with air support. Yes, we're not a NATO country, but Ukraine is fighting not only for its land and people. There's no doubt that Ukraine is protecting democratic values and the European Union countries bordering Russia from possible encroachments in the events of defeats in this war of civilization. So do Western countries of the coalition still have any doubts about what exactly and how they are really justified?
That is a very long and very complex question. I'm going to jump back. First of all, you cannot keep criticizing the West for giving you masses and masses and masses and masses of equipment when you sold all your equipment to other countries before this whole war started. Remember 2012, 2013. So yes, there has to be a balance of understanding about these things. The doctrine, the NATO doctrine, yes, it does say air power. And let's remember the first Gulf War of shock and awe for 3 days. Don't ask me why the Americans don't understand this for this war. I have no idea. But I can tell you that there are hundreds, literally hundreds of Americans, experts and generals who are complaining to the White House and complaining to other governments about the lack of support for air. Now, why is this happening? Well, don't forget, Russia's not only got into Ukraine and got at Ukrainian politicians, they've also got at politicians and security services in other countries prior to this war. So you've not just got the West, you've actually got an infiltrated West. Remember that Brexit, where did the money for Brexit come from? From Russia. So there are people still, there are still structures and organizations that are favoring Russia, even on the Western side. This is a hybrid war. It's not just Ukraine, the West, and the West is all nice and rosy and doesn't love Ukraine. This is much more complex than people, especially in Ukraine, understand of what is going on outside of this. Why is there no air cover? Cowardice, in my view, and I will say that publicly. I think it's cowardice. I think people should have jumped at this straight away. As soon as the war started, they should have realized that if we're going to support, we have to support to a proper NATO doctrine, and they didn't. Now we are where we are. And it's not a nice place in many areas. It's not a nice place in many things. And this is why you see tension, which is why you see tension between politicians and generals and differences of views. It's complex.
We are absolutely thankful. We are absolutely thankful for all the support and help from our Western allies and Western countries. And without you, I don't know. Nobody knows where we could be right now.
Well, we do know.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other hand, I cannot, just to be objective, remind about. I understand that it sounds banal right now, but anyways, we had Budapest Memorandum. We gave away
Yeah,
our
we did.
nuclear weapon. Yeah,
We did.
we believed in the security guarantee of four major countries at that period of time. And let's go further in the history. I mean, from the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and I remind you, and you know about this, in 2014. So the world didn't stop putting on the border of Ukraine when he tried to capture Crimea. But before this was Georgia in 2008, and they didn't
Moldova.
stop Putin that time. And the first pipe, Nord Stream 1, was being built at that period of time, even though the war in Georgia. And afterwards, it was Nord Stream 2 during the war, and the Baltic countries and the representatives of the countries in the parliament, European, were shouting out, don't do this. It's very threatful. It's very threatful because you are given the power and the weapon into the hands of Putin, but nobody stopped them. So this might be maybe the mutual fault.
Mutual stupidity.
Even though you remind us that we were selling weapons before this period. Okay, it's a fact, but these are facts too. Don't you agree?
Yeah, they are. And it's, you know, it's, you could say it's a stupidity on both sides. We've been at peace for too long. That's the first thing. And because we've all been at peace, everybody thinks peace is the you know, the normal. Well, and why didn't we wake up when? Hey, come on! Not even Georgia, Chechnya.
Yeah.
Look at Chechnya. I mean, I used the expression years ago of how Russia would fight, and I said that, you know, places would be Groznified, and people actually laughed at me for that sort of that word. But that's exactly what they did to Mariupol. That's exactly what they did to Bucha. They Groznified. They just destroyed everything. And you know, why haven't Western politicians understood this? Some are bored. I mean, you've seen, you know, that's people working for Gazprom, politicians working for Gazprom, politicians getting backhanders, as I said, Russian money for Brexit. And all these things that we haven't grasped that Russia has been trying to undermine us for all of us, not just Ukraine, but all of us for a long time. I'm sorry to say, it's just that the West is still in a more comfortable place than Ukraine. And because it's still in a more comfortable place, it's a lot harder politically to explain to the public that, you know, we're at war. We're at war, and you can see in America they don't understand that at all. In the White House, they're not at war. They're at war 10 minutes a day when they talk about Ukraine. And what should we give Ukraine next? They're not in it with you in the same way that perhaps the Baltic states feel this. Poland feels this. You know, Poland feels the pain. It's next door. So there's all these problem areas and political worrying areas that have not grasped yet that Russia's in this for the long haul, and it's in it to destroy the West and Africa and everywhere else it can.
Okay, let's get back to the question of the support from the sky. And I want to ask you, in this situation that I reminded about the doctrine of NATO, that counteroffensive operations conducted only with the help of aircraft. Okay, what's the situation with this process of transferring aircraft F-16 to Ukraine by some countries that are ready to give us, but someone stopped them, and we understand that our pilots are ready to learn to operate these F-16 aircrafts very fast, much faster than it's
they are, but you don't. They are, but you don't have any means of maintaining them. You can't even maintain your own aircraft at the moment to the same level that other people do on operations. So the amount of flights that you're flying is, compared to the number of aircraft you've got, is extremely low. Now, there could be all sorts of reasons for this, but I suspect a large amount of it is the ability to maintain the aircraft. So, and if you have difficulty maintaining aircraft of the old type, which are very simple, you will have double and treble the amount of challenge maintaining F-16 because it is quite a complex aircraft. Okay, forgetting that, you get it. You've still got to maintain it. You've still got to actually to have a system that allows you to get the right spares that you need quickly. You do not have that system inside of the Ministry of Defence. You've got terrible troubles with your procurement. And you know this is public again. And you need, for something like F-16, you need a responsive system where you can actually say, I need the part, and the part comes within hours. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, that F-16 is off the road. You can't use it again. Mm-hmm. And you don't have that system yet. So part of the American work and part of other countries' work is trying to actually to put a system in place to allow you to be able to keep F-16 flying. You can't, it's not like tanks. You can't just take it back to Poland. If it's broken, it's broken. And where it's broken in Ukraine, you can't put it on a low loader and drive it back to Poland and get it fixed. You've got to fix it in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, you have difficulty actually fixing things like tanks in Ukraine, and they have to go back to Poland. So just think on this. It's not so easy as it sounds. It's not just about flying it. It's about getting it ready to fly. Yes, your pilots are brave. Yes, they'll learn it quickly, and some of them are learning it quickly.
One of the questions that can be decided right now, we can use the airports of Poland and Romania, and these sites are ready to provide us this opportunity.
No, of course you can't.
No?
Of course you
Why
can't.
not?
No, because you've got to fly over the whole length of Ukraine. And by the time you get to the battle area, you'll only have 2 minutes there, and then you've got to fly back again. Mm-hmm. All right, you can't. And if you need to do air-to-air refueling if you want to play this sort of game. Otherwise, you're not going to have any time over the battle area. So you can't start flight. Well, you can fly from Poland, but then you're at high risk because what happens if you have to fight over the air? You haven't got any fuel for fighting. Okay, these aircraft are not designed to fly. Remember how far it is from Poland to Donetsk. Just measure it, you know, and if you're loaded with weapons, you burn fuel quite quickly.
Okay, just to resume this point of our conversation, I just want to know and understand if there's any alternative ways until we get this help from air support aircraft, because you understand, and Europeans understand, we understand that each day it's lives of real people who stand still and waiting for this aircraft support.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing about the aircraft support, I mean, actually the Russians are not flying as much as one could expect them to. The first thing is we need to get better close air defense for the Ukrainian brigades. So they need more close air defense. And I know that Germany is trying to produce some more close air defense weapons, and other countries are trying to produce more close air defense. So that it becomes more difficult for the aircraft to come over the battle area. The same against helicopters, not just against fixed wing. So that's one thing. The second thing is using artillery to try and devastate the minefields, and the cluster bomb artillery is more useful for that than multi-barrel rocket launchers. But that means that you've got to have really sharp coordination between the infantry brigade and the artillery. And that actually is something that the soldiers on the front line have been talking about, this need for greater coordination. So you can do that. But it doesn't remove or reduce the positiveness that you would get from F-16. But you're not going to win a war with F-16. Remember this. F-16 is merely another weapon system. It's an enabler. The bottom line is that this war will only be won by soldiers walking and soldiers fighting in trenches and working their way forward. F-16 just allows them to do their job a bit better. Okay. And even then, it's got to be in the right place at the right time. And that, again, is another complex activity that has to take place.
Okay, so let's look a little bit into the nearest future. And I want to add the information about the overview of this future. So now the debates in the capitals of the West mainly go around how to end this war in such a way so for Ukraine to be secure for its future and not to be attacked by Russia in the next 3 or 5 years or so. So are any realistic, effective ideas already the Western countries have?
No.
No? Okay. Short question, short answer. Okay. So, by the way, NATO countries ready to respond to a possible real provocation towards Poland or one of the Baltic countries, because there have been no such precedents since the end of the World War II. This is more actual key points for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that NATO has got to, for the simple reason that if NATO doesn't respond, let's say Wagner Group decides to drive into the Suwalki corridor and capture it, well, good luck to them. It's a horrible area down there. If they try to do that, then NATO has to respond. I mean, I can tell you, it's no secret that most of the foreign troops on those NATO countries have been given very clear instructions by their government that you know, if Russia does this, you fight. There won't be much ringing back to governments and saying, what do we do? So NATO has to fight, because if NATO doesn't fight, there is no NATO. I think we have to be clear about that. NATO would just fall apart, because the very essence of this is that you defend each other. And if you don't defend each other, there is no essence anymore.
It will be conventional answer.
Oh, yeah. And nobody's going to fire nuclear weapons at Russia unless they do something completely stupid. And I think that, you know, Russia knows that even if they fire a tactical nuclear weapon somewhere, the reply is almost certainly going to be conventional, because the NATO air power across all the countries has got so much air power that it can destroy what the Russians have got on the front line quite quickly. Then you ask, well, why don't they do that now? It's a good question.